Hey, what's up, guys? Chris Wiseman here at PAX South with the very handsome Adam Sessler, and we just wrapped up. Well, it's you. I was talking about you. We just wrapped up with our panel, which was called Final Product versus Expectations. Went really, really well. What do you think?
No, I really liked it. It was kind of it was a moment to kind of, I guess, open the kimono. Yeah. You get a sense that there.
I would have said pull back the curtain, but open the kimono is way more expressive. Yeah.
But that the making of video games is kind of like what they say about sort of bills in Congress. It's like making sausage. Everyone wants to eat it, but you don't want to know how it gets made.
Right.
And that games and some of the strange things that may come across to a lot of the consumers out there. There are reasons why games are revealed to people in these particular ways, because they're actually making the game and they don't always know what the game is going to be in the final product.
And one of the things too that is exciting sometimes to see is leaks, oh, what's going on, people keep up with it, but at the same time, every time I see a leak or something like that, it kind of a small part of me kind of dies.
Yeah.
It feels bad.
Well, I know a lot of these people, and I'm like, okay, this is not good for them. That it sounds like it's just a nominal piece of information. This game exists. This game takes place in this place, but for that developer team, it's the way I described it on the panel. It's kind of like if someone else announced your pregnancy.
Yeah.
There's a way and a means that they wanted to articulate the game to the audience, and if someone jumps that, people start to have impressions, and it can actually be a very, very negative impact on the development team. And I know of games that have changed as a result of leaks that happened too early.
And they can change drastically to the point where it might not be the same game that they initially intended it to be.
Because there's a lot of iteration that happens on games before you hit on what you want the game to be it the gameplay, be it the story, be it the setting. It goes through a lot of changes, and you want to get closer to what you know is going to be before you start talking to the public about it.
And one of the cool things about talking to the public and having that panel is one of the subtle kind of undertones that we were trying to get across too was hey, please don't be a dick.
Yeah.
Stop tearing apart things or stop doing really negative reviews simply because it'll get hits.
Yeah, I mean, we have an internet culture, and I'm not even just saying, hey, there's clickbait out there, but that there's this idea that you can only look as you only come across as a good critic if you're very, very critical. If you're negative, that somehow you look smarter. I think that's a problem, and I was guilty of that when you're in your youth and you're trying to make a name for yourself. You don't want to be the guy who likes something when everyone else doesn't seem to like it. And that really fosters everyone having to be very cynical and very suspicious, and that the game has to, somehow has to be superlative in a way that may not be physically possible for it to actually generate something that is an accolade. And I think what I liked about getting older and aging in the process of reviewing games is it became much easier just to really gush and like something that I, honest to God, really liked.
And also to kind of remain objective. This is one of the things that is really direly important to me when I'm expressing something, because just because something didn't resonate with me or a game didn't resonate with me doesn't mean that it's bad. A really good example was a first-person shooter my friend played, Legendary, which came out years ago.
Oh, I remember that. Legendary the box.
Yeah. Not necessarily a bad game, but it really resonated with him. I played it and I was I didn't like it as much, but it doesn't make it a bad game if it doesn't necessarily resonate with you.
Moreover, you're not a bad person for liking something that other people don't like. I think it's really, really uncool for people to pass judgment on people who have enjoyed something that they're not sharing in the same enjoyment. I've always found myself more curious when I played a game that I didn't like and someone else liked it as to how I assume this person is legitimate in their opinion of it, and I'm more curious to see, it's very interesting to see how two people can look or play the same thing and come away with very, very different, reactions to it.
And it can be so polarly opposite, where with this, industry, it should be far more inclusive than it is sometimes.
Yeah.
Because if you and I have something in common, or there's a game that we really love, and we could both gush about it for hours, oh man, and then immediately in the same breath, if there's another game that I don't like that you do, and then all of a sudden we're the worst of enemies.
Exactly.
And that doesn't make any sense. Yeah. So, tell us a little bit about what you're doing, because you've been doing consulting for a while.
Right. So, I do consulting, the majority of which, I'm not at liberty to divulge, but obviously it's very public. I'm working with the cool guys over at Gun Media and Ilphonic on the Friday the 13th game. Because it is just kind of the most dream of dream projects. As someone who grew up on 80s slasher movies, loves Friday the 13th, loves horror movies, and what they're doing with this very, very interesting multiplayer that it's called asymmetric. It's a term of convenience because it doesn't follow the other asymmetric games that are out there. There are 7 counselors, 1 Jason, and those 7 counselors could work together, or you could play it all by yourself through the course of the multiplayer match. You probably don't want to work with everyone, but you want to work with some people. You might want to be with the guy who's really slow if you're fast, because if Jason shows up, well, you'll take off, and he'll take the first prey. That's the closest to him. It really is it's asking some fascinating questions about multiplayer design that I've always thought about, and it has wonderful challenges that I'm really excited to kind of work with them to figure them out and make them work in the game.
And what's really fascinating too is just like how different it is from other games. Because for a game to really accurately or appropriately, do justice to a franchise, sometimes you have to completely change like the structure of how a game is made.
So it's almost like reverse engineering and going against some of the conventional wisdom about multiplayer design. Most multiplayer is tag, and the way the game plays is by creating conflict. This is a game of hide and go seek. For the 7 counselors, the last thing they want is conflict because they will lose.
Yeah.
And that really, there's not a very common way that you would look at where a game is supposed to be played and how it's supposed to be fun. But in this case, it not only honors the legacy of the franchise, but it also is more fun than if we did it like where you're going to fight Jason. That doesn't just not make sense. That wouldn't be nearly as fun.
In a lot of ways, it seems kind of like a backwards version of Evolve, where you have a team of people hunting someone down. Instead, the team of people are running away from the terrifying Jason with his machete. Well, again, Adam, thank you so much for talking to us today. Thank you for being on the panel.
My pleasure.
It's always awesome. Tell people where they can find you on Twitter if they don't already follow you.
At Adam Sessler.
Easy
My
enough.
name. Yeah.
Adam, thank you so much again.
pleasure.
And you guys keep watching RedBeard TV. Woo!